And hello, and welcome to Creation Station Monthly. I'm Bob from Creation Station, and this is the month of March is for women engineers, and we're going to be talking with a couple of them here. This is our monthly show where we introduce you to two creative people who are doing something in their field, trying to learn and grow and build, and learning how they get to be creative, what they did, who helped them learn to be creative, and moving on with things. Yeah, you hear that word a lot around here, creative, and we're going to keep on going with that. But first, let's introduce you to who we have today. We have Jenna Martinetti. She is from here in South Florida. How are you doing today, Miss Jenna?
I'm doing good, thank you.
And we also have Aisha Hamid. She is up in Washington right now, I think. Where
Northern
are
Virginia.
you? Northern Virginia. Okay, we'll call it that. So, how are you guys doing today?
I'm doing.
Welcome for being here with us. We have, if you haven't caught one of our earlier episodes of our show, what we do with this show is we just get two people who are pretty much strangers and we get them talking to each other about this kind of stuff. So our first question is always, hey, please introduce yourself and tell us what made you an engineer? Why'd you want to be an engineer? Or what's going on when you think of the word engineer in yourself? And Aisha, you go off, and then Jenna, you just feed off of.
Okay.
Oh, awesome. So I actually started off on the pre-med track and transitioned into engineering after I had sort of explored it a little bit more. Interestingly enough, I think that my exposure to working on MySpace layouts really influenced my interest in IT a lot. So, I kind of drew from that experience and excitement from when I was a kid. I made like a bunch of websites and stuff. So I had gotten into IT, but I wasn't really considering it as a field that I wanted to go into until I had a amazing teacher who had introduced me to a work, I guess I'd call it a work study program with NASA. And it had really opened my eyes to what a huge field IT is. It went from just being web development to this massive thing that I could be a part of. And I just found it really interesting. And I think the community is awesome. I love tech. Like I love all the people in tech. It's been fun.
Well, that's interesting because I guess we didn't start, but so you must be a software engineer, I'm guessing. Is that
Oh yeah,
what's your
I didn't
term?
even. So I actually got my degree in networking and telecommunications. But
Okay.
I've done a little bit of work in all kinds of stuff. I guess software development would be a part of it. Database, but just in my coursework, I've done a lot of these things.
Okay. So I'm a civil engineer, so it's not we need techie, but I'm not the techie one in my field. Although I have often need help from the techie folks. But I actually started in engineering. It's interesting that you say I was an awesome teacher. In high school, I had no idea what I wanted to do to go to college, and I was just looked at my physics teacher, and I was like, well, I like physics class, so let me go see what they would recommend I do. I have no idea, right? So I went up to my physics teacher and I asked him, hey, I like projectiles, I like this, I like that. I got it in ideas, and he's like, yeah, you should try civil engineering. So I'm like, okay, I'll do it. So I was extremely fortunate in that I decided to go through my major for civil engineering in college, and I got to the civil engineering courses and was like, this is awesome. It's math, it's interesting. And I think, the fact that you can apply it, logic to it, and I know you must have the same logical thinking brain to
Oh
be in
yeah.
IT because it is the logic. That to me, it's just, I want to say it makes it easy because, of course, it's not easy. It makes it logical, right? And so
Yeah.
I think, where the drive is there, the problem solving logic.
Oh, for
That's
sure. I
interesting.
think that like having a good teacher is the make it or break it for me. And I just didn't have that in pre-med. But I definitely had a lot of support in IT. Like, I mean, like nothing I had ever had before. Which is why I say I like the community a lot. I don't know if like engineers have the same kind of clickiness the way that tech people do. Um, but it's awesome, you know,
Same.
and seeing a project to go from like start to finish is like the most satisfying thing ever, you know, and just really putting in the hours and the hard work and stuff. Which is another thing is the team aspect of it, you know. I was really drawn to that. I really like working in teams a lot, and just kind of bouncing ideas off of people because with the right people, it becomes like this amazing experience. Um, and I had that a lot when I was at Langley, where, you know, the rest of our group had left the facility and it was me and like a couple of people and we were still at like the NASA campus and stuff and we were talking to the mentor guy we had with us, RJ, if you're watching this, you're awesome, thank you so much. But it was really just like asking him questions and he was taking us around and he took us to like all these facilities in there and we got to see all these things and the networking was just awesome, you know. So it was huge. It really changed the trajectory of my life, I think, you know. So that was a great thing. Mentors and teachers.
Jana, you mentioned projectiles. Were you talking, and then Aisha's over at Langley doing stuff. So are we talking like what sort of engineering crossing paths is that there?
Okay, so I just remember that about physics. When I think back to high school physics, which was a very long time ago, that's what I remember thinking was cool, that you could figure out how far, something could shoot based on the angle and the speed, right? And so that's where I like linked my moment of I should go ask what I could do in life with this. Um, Not that I get to really do projectiles ever or do anything like that now in my career as a civil
You
engineer.
don't launch
But
catapults out over the beach now?
my son does, the good old spoon where you flip it and you
Uh-huh.
fling things. Unfortunately, he's discovering that one right now. So, but I don't do too much projectile launching anymore.
Speaking
I'm
of
sure I will be
projectiles,
soon.
I thought this was interesting. I was just reading an article earlier today about Lockheed Martin working with Sikorsky on automating helicopters, which I thought was really interesting, the kinds of physics that go into incorporating that kind of technology. I think a lot of people are kind of at the forefront of being worried about their jobs getting replaced by technology right now. And that's a big conversation that I hear people having a lot. Um, I think the landscape is going to change for the jobs and stuff, but I don't think that it necessarily means that people are going to be out of work. You know what I mean? Um,
It's
but it
just
was good to
different
be,
type of
yeah,
work.
it is different. You know, I thought it was really cool though. They did a test flight
That's
today, which
interesting.
is, mhm.
That's like
Okay, there
the
we go.
autonomous cars too. It's a
Yeah,
scary reality, I think.
we talked about that during the weekly show a couple of weeks ago about that for that.
Oh,
Um, I,
did you hear about the, I'm sorry, did you hear about
no,
the
no.
city in Japan that they're making? It's a fully automated city with driving cars. I think
Yeah.
Toyota is actually making it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of the things. Florida actually happens to be a leader in the country for autonomous vehicles. Up in the villages up in near Tampa is one of the nationwide testing grounds for it, for all that kind of stuff. And that's the kind of thing. So what sort of equipment? I mean, you guys both are engineers looking at things from a radically different point of view. So Jenna, what kind of physical equipment are you looking? Because we know Aisha's really, she gets her good computer rig and she's happy to go, and she just needs a good cloud. But for you, what do you think about when you think about engineering equipment? Are you thinking those big monster machines like we just saw in the Suez Canal trying to move a ship, or are you thinking what other kind of things do you think about?
Mine is totally not that amazing, big, and interesting. So the civil engineering that I do is basically for the infrastructure that runs, our everyday lives. So we're talking the water, the sewer, the drainage for when it rains, the roadway networks, and that type of infrastructure. So for my day-to-day job, basically we are responsible for producing plans for projects that the local municipalities, whether it be the city, the county, or the state, are going to do to improve some type of infrastructure. So maybe they need to replace water mains, maybe they need to upgrade the roads, provide drainage on a road that's flooding, raise a road for sea level rise. So basically, we prepare the plan set. So we use computers a lot. Well, I mean, we are highly reliant on computers, especially during COVID, you know. So
So like
we use
modeling and stuff
programs.
like that.
What was that?
Is that for like modeling and stuff like that?
So if it's a network that we need to analyze, then yeah, we would get into modeling for a drainage network or for a water to what size pipe to make a water main or a sewer main. So yes, we do modeling programs. Then we have also CAD drafting programs. And then those are used to produce plans that then would be transmitted to the contractor who gets to build the project. So they're the ones that get to see the big machines and we get out there. And I know what Aisha said earlier is finishing a project is definitely one of the most rewarding things. And for me, the ability to work on a project for a year, 2 years, 3 years, and then it goes to construction. And then we are just a small role during the construction process. But what I love is being able to see a finished product in the ground, you know, drive by it, look at it, take my kids there to see it, whatever. So that's one of the most rewarding parts of my job personally, I think, is working on something and then getting to see, like you said, that finished product and just being proud of it, being part of things.
How does that timeline compare for the two of you for a project from start to finish like that? Because I'm used to doing my small little projects that take to put into motion. You guys both have things that take way longer than that, especially if it's taking years.
Oh yeah, I think that tech projects can take just as long. I've had a professor who worked at on like an airport project. Leesburg Executive Airport here, local to Northern Virginia, actually has a fully automated watchtower for watching like the airplanes and stuff that are coming in. Air
Wow.
traffic controllers use that, and it's a pretty awesome setup, but it does take years. I am actually interested in methodologies that you guys use to kind of move through your projects, because something that I noticed that is kind of different in tech, I think, is that we have a lot of different types of methodologies. So like, there's like a software development life cycle for software. There's like a waterfall method. A lot of people use like agile methodology, which is like updating things very frequently if you have a client that has a lot of adjusting needs and stuff like that. Do you guys use any of those, or is there something kind of different that is used in the civil engineering world?
So we are very typically schedule and budget driven. So, like most projects, you know, so our tracking mechanisms, methodology is going to be dependent on the process, obviously, to get to our finished product, but is watching our schedule. So we use, Microsoft Project to produce schedules, and then we keep track of them. We use our accounting software to keep track of, which is Ajira, just to keep track of our budgets and our resource staffing and things to just see, okay, how are we doing? And then we use Excel really a lot for our construction budget and keeping track of that. I mean, the basics, but critical. I mean, it's not just, an old school Excel. It's complicated, fairly. Not in your world, probably, but
Excel is so
in my
underrated.
world, complicated Excel.
I think that people don't give Excel enough credit. I think it's such a robust program. I mean, especially for data scientists. I recently found out, like, well, not recently, but I was able to run some macros on Excel, which basically like automates certain processes in it. And it's pretty mind-blowing to me that you can pretty much run a program, to do something in Excel. It just seems kind of like it was I mean, before I had gotten into the field, it really was just kind of like a workbook for me to just put things in cells. But I think tech really transformed my opinion of Excel.
And I think that's you guys are right there on where I was going with this was what do you think, how do you use your tools to be creative? I think you guys just were filling all those gaps in.
Oh yeah. Jessica, you mentioned AutoCAD, I think earlier. That is a big one for 3D modeling and stuff that I've seen a lot of people using, which I think is so cool. I have never made a model myself, but that is something that I wish I knew how to do because I would be just pumping things out of a 3D printer all the time. If I did.
We have the 3D printers here in the library for you guys. One of the things that
That's good to
you
see.
guys, yeah, Jenna, yeah, if you haven't had a chance to stop by for ours, we do that for the public. You can come in and print off of several of the scientific databases and things. We printed a lot of coronaviruses to kids when
Oh
we
my
first
goodness.
reopened. It was a fun little reminder for people. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
so when you guys think about engineering, you guys are really both passionate about this, obviously, and you guys are doing your things. What do you think when society, when someone else out there hears the word engineering, and that's why we try to get two totally different viewpoints on this word. What do you think of when you try to explain to people, no, I'm an engineer. What does that mean in your mind? And what do you think people are just immediately jumping to? And how do you try and fix that and explain it?
Train
Mm.
engineers. I think most of the time everybody jumps to, if you say you're an engineer, they're like, either they're like, a trainer, like, what do you do? Or, whoa, you're an engineer? What does that mean? You know, get that a
Nice.
lot. Whoa. So you get
Yeah.
that a lot?
Honestly, a lot of people don't really believe that. Well, I don't want to say a lot of people, but I have gotten a lot of like, what? IT is in engineering or a part of the engineering school, you know? So I guess a lot of people don't really think of tech as part of engineering, even though, it seems kind of like it would be to me. But I think that really my big thing is that a lot of people think that all that I do is just kind of sit in front of a computer in front of a dark room and don't really do anything aside from that. But I think IT is a lot more, or at least now, a lot of interfacing with people and having a lot of face-to-face conversations where you're figuring out things, coming up with ideas, brainstorming. And you're just seeing it in all sorts of capacities now. There's like tech and healthcare. It's in finance, so there's like fintech. There's just all kinds of things. Really, I couldn't even scratch the surface right now.
I think COVID unfortunately gave everyone in this world a whole new respect for tech people in our IT departments and our reliance on that because obviously like we had to function working from home. That's a year ago, well, not a year ago, I guess like a year and a half ago. If you would have asked me if I could work from home and manage a team of engineers, I would. I mean, my mom has been asking me that for years. Can't you work from home a few days? I was like, no way. That's impossible. You can't manage people from home. How can you do that? I have to be there to manage my team. No way. And then boom, sink or swim,
How's
right? And we made it happen. What's that?
Do you think that was a smooth transition?
I amazingly so. And I'm sure
Really?
that our IT people were working off the clock, over the clock, constantly, trying to make sure that we could, all have remote access to to our, our systems that like we were at the office. I just can't even imagine what that had to entail and what that had to take. But they did it, and hats off because we worked. I mean, I'm still working from home 75% of the time. And so is some of my team, waiting for their vaccine. And then, we start slowly coming back into the office. And it's absolutely amazing that we've been able to function like that.
Yeah, I really think that the change of roles, because I think before COVID, tech was such a behind the scenes role, and now it's definitely at the forefront of a lot of things, or at least at the forefront of a lot of people's minds, right? Like, I mean, we are talking to our tech people for sure right now. And it's funny because, I think that whole idea of tech people being behind the scenes is it's very cool seeing it get broken down right now because it is so old school. I see people that like, you know, are really advocating for making like the whole remote work thing a full-time thing. And I think that it's very possible for a lot of jobs, you know, and not hard to do with things like Amazon Cloud services being released and stuff. We can have these same facilities at home and kind of, yeah, advocate for a better work-life balance for people, which I think is so, so important and not recognized enough here in America.
Going along those lines, following up on that thought there about the idea of trying to have that balance and trying to have that work from home thing, how do you guys think you as women in the industry have been treated or supported, not supported? Did you have you kind of both vaguely mentioned a mentor in the past, maybe? Tell me about that. Tell us about what, who helped you get to where you are, or the obstacles that you had to overcome to get to where you are now.
Well, I, for one, am really stubborn and steadfast. So I think that if someone tells me I can't do something, that is the biggest motivation for me to do it. And I got a lot of pushback, I think, when I first, well, because I worked full time while I was going to school full time. So I had to get a lot of my tech experience by competing in competitions and stuff like that. Or doing, you know, like work study type things in my spare time. But an internship was totally out of the question for me. But getting admission into an internship and getting your university to sponsor you sometimes can be so difficult. And I don't know if this is really an issue because I was a woman or what, but like, I mean, that at one point I was trying to get into a Lockheed Martin competition. I recall this. And it was so impossible, I feel like. And I had to break so many, you know, barriers. And this year, actually, the university sent the second group of people to compete in the same competition. So I'm so glad that I had brought it up and brought it to the administration for them to see that it was a possibility. But before I did, you know, it was so tough to get sponsorship. It was so tough to like get people to agree to be I had to have a professor go with me too. I That was also really challenging. Um, but I mean, you know, like I said before, I think that having the right advocates is so, so important. And I think women especially need that, you know. Because at the end of the day, tech is still a very male-dominated field, and it can kind of just be hard to be yourself in it. People will discredit you. Because when I was trying to get into that competition, the first thing that I was told, and what I was actually told over and over again, was that I probably just didn't get admitted, and that wasn't true. So, um, yeah.
Well, I think your first point is very interesting because for me that's what I was immediately thinking was, well, I'm pretty strong, outgoing, stubborn is probably a good word. And I think that was very important to success in, the engineering field, which obviously is predominantly men. Um, Things have come a long way in the past few years. I've been in the field 17 years now. So initially, especially like when I was in engineering school, um, the ratios were uh, good if you want, depending how you look at it. There was, 3 or 4 girls in every class, and that's about it. Everyone else was men. So I think to me, personality type represented a challenge, and I like that, and so I think that having to prove yourself and see a challenge and wanting to overcome it is a strong trait. And then it gives you pride when you get to that point. And that doesn't change. You still walk into, or I still walk into a meeting, and having a major meeting on a project, and that when you walk in there, you need to prove yourself, because some people in there are like, oh, who's that? What's she doing here, or whatever. So again, I don't mind the challenge at all, and I think that that's something that every woman needs to keep in mind. Like, don't look at it as a barrier. Look at it as a challenge and overcome it.
Yes,
Crush it.
absolutely. I agree 100%. You know, I mean, I think that also I'd like to add to that that I think a lot of people have imposter syndrome where, they just don't really believe that they deserve, something that amazing that's happening, And I just, over the years have told myself like, hey, if you have the opportunity coming your way, take it. It doesn't matter whether you feel like you are worthy of it or not. You know, the fact is that if you wasn't, it wouldn't have came your way. So and that's a huge thing, and that is something that someone I really respect had told me one time when I was having a really low point, and that's something that I think that anyone who's listening to this could get a lot out of.
Yeah, I use the analogy, like, of course, it's a math analogy, but I use the analogy like being in school. If you were to start, in your first week of school and look to like the middle chapter of your math book, you'd be like, oh my goodness, there's no way I'm going to know how to do that problem, right? But then
Mhm.
when you take the steps and you get to that point and you're at that chapter in the middle of school, you're like, bam, okay, that makes sense now because you've taken the steps. So you can't be intimidated, like you just said, by thinking, how am I going to do this? Just know and have that confidence that you're going to take the right approach and you're going to get to that point and you're going to learn how to do and so
Yeah.
I try to tell that to my daughter sometimes. Just take it easy. We'll get there.
It's growing that step by step by step and doing the things there. Aisha, you mentioned Lockheed Martin and you mentioned NASA earlier. You did internship there or something at NASA, was it?
So it was, I would call it a work development. It was more like a
Okay.
competition type thing. I did too. So luckily, both times just surrounded by amazing people. I mean, it really solidified my want to go into aerospace. Like I think that it was like a distant dream to me before, and after this, I was like, oh, this is definitely what I'm trying to do with my life.
Yeah, I'd love to be part of Artemis right now if I could. However, I don't think I'm the one that they're looking for right now. But that made me think of things because Jenna, you didn't mention any of that for yours. What did you get for internship time? Did you have those capabilities back then? Did you have access to that now that people have more access to things?
So internships are, yes, okay. I didn't do them. Yes, I had access to them is the short answer to the question. What I did in college, I worked in college. I didn't do any internships. I actually was able to be a research assistant and teaching assistant like the last year for our wind hazard earthquake engineering lab up there at Florida State. Um, and that was what I did instead of an internship. I probably wasn't like the textbook engineering student who, yes, everybody encouraged you to go do internships. That is definitely a thing. It just wasn't mine. We had to do a senior design project, which is required at the end of everybody's college in engineering college career. And as part of that, you have to work with a local engineering firm and kind of have a mentor and a team, and you work on a project. So through that, it wasn't really an internship, but I did get some experience working on a project and in a program. And I was able to just use that when I got out of college. I was lucky that it was at a time when there was a need for civil engineers. And I just put that I had a little bit of experience, doing that. And that was enough to get me in with Calvin Giordano, who I still work for. So I've
Oh,
started
that's
with
awesome.
them and stayed with them. So yeah, 17 years. Almost to the day, actually. I started in March of, yeah, a long time ago. So yeah, thank you. And to that point, I've worked from being an engineer intern, by definition of having the license for that, not by actually doing an internship, through the ranks to, project manager, senior project manager, and I'm the director of engineering now at Calvin Giordano. So,
That's amazing.
having that strength and will and I think the open mind and luckily having support, from the company. Obviously, they never doubted me, and so that went a long way to be able to keep the confidence in myself as well. So.
We
That's really
definitely we definitely need a lot more civil engineers right now too, between here in South
Fort Lauderdale.
Florida needing things for sea level rise and the
Mhm.
entire infrastructure system going around the country. And I think you guys are both going to be involved in projects indirectly, at least for this big, huge rollout, I hope. Yeah. Wow.
I'd love to throw something great out there into the world at some point in my career, hopefully, though. I'm only at the brink of starting now.
And tell us about that.
Good.
What kind of what's your dream project that you'd kind of want to see that you'd like to bring out into the world? That you want to see something that you had a hand in building, and this is what you want to discover and create and build.
Well, I think that, well, something that really spoke to me, Jenna, when you was talking was the fact that you had said that you have progressed a lot in your role, moved on from being a civil engineer to the director of engineering. That's really awesome. And that's something that I really look
Thank you.
for a lot when I think about jobs is what kind of growth I could get at those companies. Um, I'm in the process of applying right now, and that's one of the questions that I ask recruiters is like, well, what types of roles can people in, this at this level have, because there's so many different directions you can go in with tech, and when I was doing that competition at Lockheed, it was an AI-based competition. And that really sparked my interest in AI, that was my first exposure to it, really. And, as a result of that, I attended a Cisco conference on AI, and I kind of just went on to explore it a little by little and landed in an internship that was completely virtual with the University of Sharjah, where they basically told me to use YouTube and figure out how to make a convolutional neural network, and I did. And it came out pretty okay. The results weren't perfect, but it was such a huge learning experience for me. And that's really what I want the most out of my career is, these sort of like domino effects, occurrences that kind of get me into something that, I can be really passionate about, or I can see myself being really passionate about as someone who's just newly starting. I think that I really want to at least be able to contribute to something scientifically, that is really at the brink of something new, and what they were working on was Edge AI, um, which is, it is pretty new in
Which
artificial
is what?
intelligence. Would you say?
What does that stand for?
So at Edge, what they were using Edge artificial intelligence for was processing anomalies that get detected by solar panels immediately, like on the panel, Whereas typically when you're getting and categorizing data from, a sensor, for example, you would categorize it somewhere other than where, it's getting collected at. So it's not immediate, right? But what this network would do is it would be able to get the information and immediately process it, and that's kind of like what most tech is just kind of like speeding things up, and making things happen faster. Um,
Definitely.
yeah,
I think
it was
we're
pretty.
all spoiled. The
Yeah,
computer
that
has a
sounds really
little
cool.
delay
Yeah.
or something.
Oh yeah.
You think, oh, it's so slow. Everybody wants it now,
Yeah.
now, now.
It's so crazy to me to think about YouTube, for example, like when I was a kid and I would like try to watch YouTube and you're just like watching the video and you're like going back and you're like, oh, it's taking forever to load. And now like you just go and it's instantaneous, and that's such a huge luxury. People don't realize that, that was a lot of work that went into sort of being able to process that much data at once, and streaming even, so streaming is also a really interesting,
Mhm.
new.
Yeah, and that whole digital divide is one of the things libraries are still working on, trying to help everybody get across to either get them the actual equipment, like we all saw from schooling from home and stuff, or just helping them get access in the library to much faster, better, sturdier networks and stuff like that here. Jenna, what's your dream project? What's the one thing you'd love to get your hands on and build?
Um, well, I don't
Dream
really have
big,
a dream
anything that you could
project.
possibly want.
Um, I think honestly, I've really gotten my hands in a lot of different types of projects locally. I think what I would like to do is be involved in a project in the city I live in. So just to see, around me, and I really don't have like a big dream project. Sorry. It's not because I'm not a
No,
dreamer. I don't have that mentality. I just,
you've
really,
already seen it and done it. That's the thing.
no, I don't know. I've done lots of them. So I don't know that I have a specific, I'll have to think on that. I'm sure Aisha has a really good one though.
I can't say I have a specific dream project too. That is definitely a hard question, Bob.
Yeah, that's
We try. That's the goal, is to get people to think and try and figure it out things. I like the idea of the what you were talking about for a solar panel that you had to do,
Oh
Aisha.
yeah,
I think
that
I
was
think
really
using
cool.
that putting AI to work in a good solid way that is easy for people to understand how and why it works.
Yeah.
We're actually going to teach a class on that next month here at the library about how to understand what AI actually is, and taking those sensors and taking those kinds of things and interpreting is a perfect example of what it really does versus that.
Well, something else that I thought was pretty interesting from that was that well, this is specifically from the competition that I did, but there's a lot of question about ethics when it comes to AI, and that is a really emerging field. But in engineering specifically, there is a lot of ethics, and I drew from a lot of civil engineering projects, ethic board discussions that I found on the National Engineers like website, and I just thought it was really interesting because, ethics is definitely a big part of engineering, and it's something that I think that I could really see myself going into after that project, especially in AI because it is kind of uncharted territory. I think a lot of big projects, in other scopes of engineering, like mechanical or civil at least, it seems like there have been a lot of discussions about how to handle those sort of situations. But when it comes to AI and you're dealing with something that is producing a opinion or processing opinions, things can get a little bit convoluted. Um, so that was what interesting to me.
Well, what about, I guess it's kind of the same idea as the AI is the personal invasion of privacy. Like, I think that is such a fine line with the artificial intelligence and all of the IT and tracking, and I'm not even into it. And I'm like, I refuse. I'm not on social media. I just feel like I'm like that person that doesn't want anybody, I don't have Alexa in my house. I don't want people listening in. Aisha's probably like, they already listening in to you, girl. Don't worry. But
Well,
No,
I
that's
think
that's
that's
tough.
a valid concern. You can look at Germany, and their like politics around, for example, when Google was doing their imaging for mapping Germany, it came with a lot of caveats, like they, wanted things blurred out, like license plates and faces and like, home addresses and stuff like that, so as this field grows, I think it is so important to have, laws that sort of reflect that growth, and I think that having concerns like yours is so totally valid. A lot of people have those concerns, um, and
and
addressing
I
that's something that I think people maybe aren't ready for. I don't know.
Yeah. I want to kind of turn that back on you too, Jenna, for the idea of the ethics things and doing civil engineering, only because the big classic, at least in my mind right now, the big classic failure of civil engineering was Flint. I know you probably are tired of hearing about
FIU.
Flint. No, no, no. Flint up in Michigan, water.
Oh,
Um,
goodness. I thought you were going to say our
so
local FIU, but I don't want
the
to say it, don't I?
bridge, I know
Right.
that. Well, we could go that one too. But
No,
I
I
don't think
don't.
that that one was. Yeah, no, I was gonna say that one didn't seem to me to fit more the whys. That was just like a failure of process. But like the water management up in Flint really seemed to be a question of why and what are you doing about this and why are you doing this? And how do those sorts of things come up for you guys? Because you obviously wouldn't have any decision making in a local city here about the product after you've built it, right? I mean, it's you can only build the sewer system, you can only build the water treatment plant, and then hope that it's treated right.
Right. So actually, what we can take things to the next step. So a lot of times there, I guess there's two perspectives. The person who is inside of the, city getting the data and looking at it and making a decision oftentimes is going to be an engineer. It's going to be, public works director, city engineer, somebody like that. You hope that that's the person that's getting to make that decision. But also sometimes we can serve as a consultant to the city. And then we can also help them make those decisions or analyze the data. I guess, yeah, I can't really speak to that because that ethics are ethics. That's it. You got to do what's ethical. There's an engineering code of ethics. There's engineering judgment. There's all these things that should come into play. And, when they don't, that's it. Shame on you. And, you're making us look bad to whoever,
Yeah.
us other
It's
engineers look
awesome.
bad. You know what I mean? Like we want a good reputation.
You guys do have the engineering code of ethics, which I think is, such a huge, like at least a cornerstone to work off of. Tech doesn't, I don't think really have that, or at least not enough, especially considering the amount of information that you can get your hands on. So
Well, that's interesting because so maybe obviously the tech field has just exponentially grown and maybe too fast for its own like
yeah.
group to handle. Like there's not a main hierarchy. So like obviously the engineering profession has been critical and around for a long time. There's like you pointed out, a national society of professional engineers. There's local societies. There's licensure. I mean, let's just start with that. There's professional engineering licenses. They regulate who can do it. You have to take a test. So from the IT side, if there's licensure, does there come along with that ethics? Because really that's when ours comes into play, is when you get your professional engineering license, you are agreeing to all the responsibility and civic duties that come along with it to look out, for the people. Basically, everything is about the people. And I think that's maybe where the tech world is so broad, that how would you even control that? Where would you tell somebody, okay, say your code of ethics, like where's the control point?
Yeah. It seems like a lot of companies are sort of taking on that role individually, or, at least that's what I've seen.
Yeah.
Yeah, and unfortunately, some companies are not. And it
Right.
just gets to be, and I think, yeah. And Jenna, now, have you done anything with VR and AR, doing the 3D modeling for your projects that way?
So I don't really get my hands into design too much anymore. We do the modeling, but not, you know, um, major large scale. We don't do anything vertical either. So our modeling would be modeling pipe sizes underground or modeling the flow of water for drainage for an area or a neighborhood or things like that. So,
That's exactly where I
not,
thought that
you know,
that your two
okay.
fields cross over right there, where you're doing exactly that, designing those sewer things, doing those things, that kind of stuff. And it's just data mining behind it. And when you compare that with AR headset, for example, so that you can take in all that data using the connectivity and get live feedback on, well, no, wait, don't dig here. There's this pipe, that pipe, those sorts of things. It really feels like there's a convergence between the two types of tech now that are really getting close to that.
Oh yeah. And I think actually touching on VR, interestingly enough, when I went to Lockheed, they kind of did like a little presentation on like the future of engineering, essentially, and or really just the future of working, where they had, conference rooms where, people are waving their hands around and they're showing like different types of things on like a projector or like a holo screen or something like that. And that really is the direction. I mean, we're talking about a company that is really at the forefront of, a lot of these types of technologies and how they come out because of the
Yeah.
need there, so and they need it, so they're making it. One thing that they had that was really cool that I thought was awesome is that they had you could drive a rover and it would have the exact same delay that the rover on Mars actually had, so you could simulate it. Yeah, that was an
Oh my
awesome one.
goodness.
Yeah. And you can play like capture the flag and stuff up there. And it was pretty challenging, but it's cool. It's cool to get into the heads of people who are in like those control centers. And I think that the cool thing is, accessibility is a huge thing, and it's the driving force to a lot of innovation that's happening right now. A lot of people want to be able to work from anywhere. They want to be able to communicate easier. They want to be able to, get information quickly, So that's why we're seeing so much movement towards VR and stuff like that.
I do have one final question for you guys. We just have flown through these all of a sudden. In making this a career, and I think the idea here, usually when we try and ask this question, it's how can you turn what you're passionate about into a career? And Jenna, I think you've shown you've got that great niche that you did that, being able to drive through. But how do you think you can apply that same thing to a different career? How would you apply those same skills if you were out there looking for something different? And then Aisha, we're going to get back to you with crossing over between medical and tech here in a second.
So I would say, just generally speaking, ideally, if you're gonna find a career, make it something you're interested in. I mean, that to me is, everyone says you don't want to work, but we have to. If you're doing something you love, you don't work a day. Well, I don't know about all that, but I do think it's definitely right. It's definitely critical to just think. I mean, nowadays, and thanks to our techie people and Google and everything, nowadays you can just Google like a simple question. I love something. What can I do? I mean, and if you just got to do your research, I think, find the right sources. I mean, I like I said, I was very blessed in that I asked the question and I was, bam, it was correct. But I think generally speaking, that's the key is figure out something you love and figure out if there's a way to excel in it by asking people, asking around, doing your research. And then I'm sure there is, if it's not a professional thing, go to a tech school, just start somewhere,
Yeah,
that's, I think, the key.
starting is the key, right? I love, you know, I love telling people that because so many people have ideas and, making a move on an idea is an essential part to finishing it. And a lot of people don't do that.
And Aisha, I want to trickle back to that because you chose this career in engineering now, but how did you, when you got out of medical, you were doing pre-med and then you jumped into engineering. And now that you've seen how all this is mishmashing and going back and forth with things, are you tempted to go back? Are you continuing here? What do you think is your career path going forward?
Well, I think, well, my career path, like I'm definitely staying in tech. I don't think I'm going to be going over to medical, not for any other reason other than just like I really like where I'm at, But I will say though that, a lot of my friends, I have, for example, a friend who's a teacher who wants to do a career transition, and then I have another friend who is just a retail worker, and she also wants to do a career transition. I tell people all the time to just look at tech, I mean, I know that that might be biased because I'm in it, but it is such an easy field to get into. It really is. You don't need a degree, and I think that's a pretty awesome thing about it, is that, you know, the getting your foot in the door process for, being a doctor, for example, is so hard, right? Or, you know, even for engineers, like in other capacities, civil engineers, mechanical, and all of that, you have to at least, have gotten your degree in that. In IT, you can really just study, produce a work product, and show people that you're capable of doing something. And that's really just kind of enough, you know. The field's not looking for more than that right now. And I'm telling people all the like left and right, just get into it. Get into it. You're gonna make tons of money. It's awesome.
And see, you circle us back to what Jenna was talking earlier about is anybody can do this, and there's no standards.
Well, I mean, you know, there's definitely a standard, right? But like, you know, I mean, when I think about the scope, right? You can literally do this in any capacity, you know, and you know, at least get into an entry level and get a taste for it, right? We saw, you know, we with MySpace and stuff, you know, people who were just kids, you know, like in middle school and high school and stuff, making their playouts and everything like that, you know, you would, you know, think that that's not going to play a big role, but it played a huge role in a lot of people's lives, especially when it comes to web development. You know, a lot of what we see in terms of, you know, social media design and stuff, like those people were very invested in what they did from a young age, you know, so just kind of exploring your interests. And I will also add one thing. I think everyone at one point has an app idea. So,
Yes.
you know, I like, you know, I mean,
But
it's
I wouldn't
awesome.
even know where to start.
Right?
What do you do with the idea for
It's a
now?
Google search. I'm telling you, it is so easy. Like you could probably find, you know, if you really wanted to do it, you could probably find a way to make it happen. And that's the thing that I think everyone gets interested in it for at least a period of time, is always that one app idea that everyone has.
And Jenna, what do you
Well,
think about
I
for young
think,
people getting into your side of things as a career?
well, um, well, I definitely think that just honestly, like tech, civil engineering is not going anywhere. Um, the world needs us. I tell, you know, I go into the classrooms and I tell the kids, you know, did you flush your toilet this morning? Did you wash your hands? I hope you did. Did you ever think about like where that water came from? Where is it going? You know, it's the most simple thing. I'm not getting complicated. That's such a simple thing. Without that, I mean, you live probably in the Fort Lauderdale area, right? You know how that went. I mean, that is just critical infrastructure type of stuff. So I would say that if you have any slight interest in civil engineering and um, can handle the math, because unfortunately, to get to a civil engineering degree, you need to go through the math classes. Not everybody loves it like I did. I was, you know, but you don't use it like every single day in your life once you get there. You just got to get through the classes in school, you know. So I would say definitely go for it. And if you think you have an interest, again, ask somebody, Google it, find out more about it, because even just in civil engineering alone, there are so many different types of civil engineers, so many places, so many different types of projects that you could work on. Um, there's so many options, you know, and like I said, it's not going anywhere. The the world needs us, NASA needs us, the government needs us, the cities need us. You need us to build a home on a new property. So it's a good profession to be in. And
Artemis needs you to get up there and build a new sewer system on the moon.
okay, that too. I'm sure NASA's got someone in line for that one.
How often would you say that you kind of cross disciplines into like, you know, mechanical or chemical engineering also?
A lot. So for our projects, again, just depending on the type of projects, we work, and going back to your team statement earlier, I agree with you completely. We have to work in a team to get a project done. So there's never a project, well, not never, there's very infrequently a project where there's one person working on it. So we have teams. So if we're doing a project for a new sewer lift station or pumping station, we need a mechanical, we need electrical, for treatment plants, especially, you need mechanical, electrical, structural, all the different types of civil engineering. So, and then on a project, even just for example, a park project, which actually parks and roadways happen to be some of my favorites because you get to see them after they're above ground. You know, those underground projects, they're just not so pretty and fancy. You know, we work with a landscape architect, we work with a surveyor, we work with an electrical engineer, we work with a structural engineer, we work with an architect. So you get to constantly, like you said too, learn a little. So, you know, I never studied landscape architecture or electrical engineering, well, electrical a little bit, but you know, there's kind of things you're constantly learning too. And I think that's what keeps me engaged and satisfied is there's always a challenge. There's always something to be learned. There's always a problem that needs solving. To me, civil engineering is a constant problem that needs to be solved, which given my personality type and background in nature, I like that. I like the problem solving aspect. So I would say do it.
That is
But-
awesome. No, that's
And
a
I
great
will,
that's a great end note, right? Wait, finish off then, Jenna. You
I
were
was
about to
say
say
one more
tell
thing.
me?
I think people need to be patient, and especially in this day and age. If you're looking for a job and you think that you're just going to get your dream job, you know, the first interview you go to or the first time you search for it or something like that, you need to be patient. You need to let the, you know, I hate to say it, but let the universe work its way, and you know, do what you need to do and be patient and let that come to you, you know. So friends are like, I don't know what to do right now. You know, a lot of people in the last year have been in that same position. And, you know, you got to get up and try and start and then be patient and work your way up and just do it. There we go. Back to it.
It's been one of my lines for a long, long time is I don't know what I want to be when I grow up. So I'm just going to do something fun for now that's interesting and keeps me occupied, and I'm going to make it happen.
Yeah,
Thank you
it
guys
looks
both
like it.
very much for being here today. This hour just flew on by for us here. I'm gonna post up the email here. Let me show our email slide up here for everybody to see for Creation Station Monthly. And again, creationstation@broward.org comes directly to me. I'll make sure that I forward any requests, comments over to our guests. Thank you both very much for being here, and we're gonna see everybody again next month.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. It was great.